episode of Video Game Logic. Today's episode was recorded on April the 16th, 2019. I'm your host, Gaming Psychologist, and with me, as always, a regular old comedian this evening.
Caffeine Rage.
Secret City of Heroes emulator operators address score leak drama, rebut personal info database rumor. That is a mouthful. New console announcements are coming from Sony and Microsoft. YouTube is to create interactive narratives. We'll have a weekly community corner with a focus on game night and a Steam weekly discovery queue. Timestamps will be in the show notes following their respective topics. Hello, Rage.
Hello.
How are you?
Well, it's kind of funny you ask after, talking to me for so long.
I know. We do this every week. It's like we just sat down to start this conversation. Yeah, we've been talking for tonight, about 45 minutes. But, that time varies. Anywhere from half an hour to an hour and a half. Granted, that hour and a half was more in the olden days when I didn't have to be up so early for things.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a big deal for me to stay up later. But still, there's always quite a bit of pre-gaming going on.
And franking content creation.
Indeed, although we don't start running Craig as early all the time, so some of that gets missed. A lot of it, though, I used to pull a lot of the pre-show, sort of inside baseball talk, but I don't do that as much anymore, because it's all basically the same, and you just swap out topics. And it's like, so how long do you think we'll discuss this thing this week?
Pretty much our show in general.
Yes. I don't know if the jokes are better or worse at that point, though.
Yes.
And we have tea.
Yes, I have my usual peppermint and honey.
I have Earl Grey. Hot.
Earl Grey, lukewarm.
Yeah, at this point, it is Jean lukewarm. So bad.
Yeah, I'm just imagining that one episode where they were on the Enterprise, which, to be fair, is most of the episodes at that point.
I was going to say, yeah.
But where the Enterprise was frozen in time.
Which one? Where they were frozen in time.
Where they were coming back from that conference and they came across the Enterprise completely frozen. And they were in engineering and there was a warp core breach and Picard drew a smiley face because he was going insane.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah. Patrick Stewart doesn't look much older now than when he was playing Jean-Luc. And that's been 30
that's the thing,
some odd years ago.
Someone actually did a comparison because the finale of the series was 30 years in the future or thereabouts. So they did a comparison of what the producers thought Patrick Stewart looked like in 30 years and what he actually looks like in 30 years. And, a wrinkle here and that's it.
Yeah.
But to be fair, most of the shortcuts you would take for a character getting older, you can't take with him because he's already bald.
Indeed. He's been bald for a long time.
Yeah, he went bald in his 30s?
I don't know, actually, when he went bald. I've never known him in anything where he wasn't bald. I mean, I guess he did probably, or has done a few things where he's had hair, like when he's had his sort of theater time in his career, and then I've seen him on a couple things. I'm pretty sure he had hair in...
he began losing
Scrooge.
his hair at 19.
Dang.
Good thing he pulls off the bald look.
He does look very good with a bald head.
Well, he started getting his hair thinning at 19. I mean, he was doing what he called a horrendous comb over. So he went full shredded wheat.
Yeah, I don't think there's a non-horrendous comb over.
Oh, so tempted to do a Trump reference right now. Oh wait, that's still horrendous.
If I ever get a bald spot or my hair gets so thin up in front, I'm just going to shave my head. I've had long hair for over a decade now, and it would be really weird, but I'm not going to do the comb over. I'm not going to be completely bald on top and have a rat tail.
No, here's what you do. You take the Larry Fine approach. and that name is completely blanking on you.
Yes,
The Three Stooge that has the hair around his head.
Oh, okay.
That's
no, I
Larry
don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do. Yeah, I don't like that look. I would just shave it all. Then my head would be cold. I'd lose a couple of pounds though. I got a lot of hair. Although something we don't have a lot of this week. See what I'm doing there? Is games. Because you've only got one, and I've kind of got 1.5. One of them is real bad, which I knew it was going to be. You said it was going to be, but it's one of those things of like, when you see a train wreck, you just can't turn away. I was like, this looks like a train wreck. I just can't not. So.
Well, to be fair, I said it looks bad. I didn't know if it was bad for certain, but, it's most likely.
Oh, yeah, it's real bad. You want to go ahead and talk about it first, because we've kind of led into it?
Yeah, sure.
So, okie dokie. So, the first game I played this week, if you could really call it a game, is Wasteland Survival on Steam. And this is a mobile game that has been... Does it count as a port if the only thing they change is remove the word tap and replace it with click? Does that count as a port? Because that's the only difference between this and if you play it on a mobile device, which I did to test it out. The resolution is exactly the same, and it just like blows it up on your screen, so everything is all really big and awkward looking. You still have to click on the buttons that you would tap to like attack and stuff on your phone. You have to click on those. So even though it looks like, an isometric, RPG where you would just like click enemies and stuff. No, you don't do that. You have to just click the attack and hope that the auto targeting hits the correct enemy or the one that you want to hit. The dog dies like immediately. So,
dude,
a
spoilers.
couple of screenshots that have the dogs in it. The dog dies immediately. And I guess you have to get another dog, or maybe you can heal that dog.
Well, to be fair, it's like George Carlin said, life is a series of dogs.
I don't think I've ever heard that George Carlin bit.
I
thought I knew most of his bits.
Yeah, he was talking about having pets.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard that one. I'll have to go find it and watch it later. But anyways, I mean, it's just a mobile game. After the first 5 to 10 minutes, it's like, hey, here's the store with all the gear. Do you want to buy the pack that's $99 that gives you all the starting stuff? You can do that. And there's timers on everything. And, if this was just like a straight up like ARPG or isometric RPG, whatever, it might be okay. Like, it's a pretty solid concept that, we haven't seen a ton, because it's like most games that involve zombies are just like sort of Left 4 Dead or pure survival, like
or
out in the
DayZ
wilderness, or DayZ. But this is, build a little base, set up defenses. So, the zombies come in waves at nighttime. You can clear out the area around your base every day in order to, get resources and stuff off the zombies. You can go explore other parts of the map. I mean, there's a bunch of different ones. The only couple that I unlocked was like a forest and a beach. But on the map, like, you can see there's a town and maybe a couple of towns. And like a plains area, there's a highway. It looks like the map extends even farther beyond what I had unlocked. And you just sort of, you build up your little base and collect food and other survivors. And yes, I know there are a couple of games that do this pretty well.
And this is not one of them.
No, it's not. But I'm not aware of one that does it in this sort of, in this style of game, I guess is the way to say it. The isometric type of thing. And you could do something interesting with like, a very loot-based Diablo type thing, but zombie survival instead of, dungeon crawling or dungeon raid, whatever. You could do something interesting with that sort of loot chase in a game like this that hadn't seen before. But then, no, they didn't do that. It's just a very standard mobile title that focuses very much on monetization and pay to skip or pay to speed up. You can very clearly buy power. There's a PvP element in the game that I didn't really get to check out, but I mean, you can buy better weapons and higher level gear and boosts and crap, and then use that to fight enemies. They're kind of trying to copy a Fallout aesthetic on some of this stuff as well. It's pretty noticeable in game. Like, there's some stuff that's not listed on the Steam store page, but there's like power armor that looks almost exactly like the powered armor from Fallout, and a number of, you know, Wasteland type gear. Like, I mean, the game is called Wasteland Survival, and the screenshot or the cover shot on Steam looks very much like something you would see, like the Fallout 4 image, where it's the guy with his dog, or Fallout 3, which I think was also the guy with his dog. Like, very reminiscent scenes of that. So, you know, on a mobile device, you scroll through it, you think, Fallout clone on mobile, but it's not. So, it's not good. It's a bad game all around. It would be bad on mobile too, because it's, you know, buying power.
Yeah, but the bar would be so much lower.
But the what?
The bar.
Oh. I mean, the biggest thing that biggest issue I have with it that would keep me from playing it on my phone is just buying power. Because, you know, I'm not going to spend money on that. I'm not going to be a whale, and I don't want to feed a whale. So, I'm not interested.
You don't want to be a whale, and you don't want to be kelp.
Yeah. I didn't even play it for an hour. Like, you know, because it's a mobile game, it wants to open up to all that stuff as fast as possible. So within like 30 minutes or so, I was like, okay, this is basically everything this game has to offer, and I can just unlock new areas and things and have more stuff to spend money on. So, but I mean, like I said, I was like, you were like, this game looks bad. I was like, this game looks bad. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, this is kind of like, I think this could be like one of those train wreck type of scenarios, where it's just like, I can't look away. I have to like see how bad it is for my own eyes, or with my own gameplay. And it was real bad. So, I mean, you know, it's your money and your time if you want to put it into this, but I wasted my time, so you don't have to. That's it.
That's all you got to say about that?
That's all I've got to say about that.
So from one mobile game to another, I guess we're taking turns this week then?
Yeah, might as well.
So I'm still in the midst of my adventures on the Google Play Store with the new phone. And also a lot of what I've played otherwise. I don't really have a lot to talk about. I'm still on Yakuza 0 every so often. Still doing, I'm doing Stardew Valley, of course, and doing Warframe. So, you know, not a lot to talk about on those three. Even though Yakuza 0, I am on the new protagonist now. So, I was right on it being dual protagonist, but it wasn't who I thought it was. But dun, 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 and the groundhog turns around.
Yes.
But I actually started playing this last week, but I didn't have enough time in it to really talk about. I played a bit of Grand Prix Story 2, which you played the original.
I did indeed.
This came out in February, so it's still pretty recent. A month, right at 2 months now. I was just looking at its release date. I haven't played the first one, so you're going to have to tell me how much they've changed, all right? It is a time management, team management game. Time management as in there's a lot of timers, there's a lot of, pick it up, play it a little bit, then put it down for a while. Which honestly is what I was kind of looking for a mobile game, to be honest. So, that's not a terrible thing for me. This is kind of usurped Plants vs. Zombies in that respect. And it doesn't feel as manipulative as Plants vs. Zombies. To be fair, that's a low bar, right?
Yeah.
So, in this you're managing a racing team. And I'm just saying racing team because it's across a bunch of different disciplines. There's off-road racing, there's on-road racing, and then they have wet weather and ice or snowy weather racing there, or the four disciplines that are essentially the four main track groups, with some of the tracks being both on and off road. I'm not sure if it varies things up even more later on or not, but a lot of it is coming down to just, figuring out how you want to manage things. And this game explains nothing, to the point that I think it's actually partially broken on the newest version of Android, because there's times it starts spitting Japanese out at me. It's sort of a pseudo town builder, where the different buildings of your complex, you have to kind of move and shift around to get environmental bonuses to improve their production. You get refineries that produce fuel, which is essentially your stamina bar for how long you can play. You get a refinery that produces nitro, that is essentially your power boost for a short portion of a race. You get a building that produces research, and all these are affected by the environment around them. And essentially, the prettier your environment, the more production you get out of these buildings, for the most part. But the game doesn't really tell you also how leveling up works, the various buildings. Like I said, I'm not sure how I really feel about this game overall, because there's a lot of, well, let's put it this way. Whenever I go to guides for it, there's a lot of, we think, or based on the last game, or based on the other games from this developer. That doesn't really fill me with confidence about your guide, right?
Yeah, so let me just say real quick before you go on, that whole building system is not in the first one at all.
Oh, it's not?
You get research by racing. So, well, you get research in a couple of ways. You get research by developing new cars. And so the more, new cars and parts you develop and refine, the more research points you get to put into upgrades, which lets you make better, faster cars and unlock new car bodies and chassis and things like that.
Okay.
And then you get a certain amount of research points from racing as well.
You get via racing as well. In this, you don't get research via racing. You get research either via the building that produces so much on a timer. Essentially, how they work the level system on the game, it makes sense when you think about it, but they don't tell you what the hell is going on. So every building has a timer on it, but it's constantly producing. So let's say a building produces 10 an hour, all right, of whatever, all right?
Okay.
So every 6 minutes, you'll get a resource, all right? Thereabouts.
Okay.
Well, whenever you level up, what it does is it tells you that the space for the building, goes up. So let's say it goes from 10 to 20, but it doesn't highlight that the timer stays the same. So instead of getting a resource every 6 minutes, you get it every 3 minutes. And the text on the timer is unspeakably small, and that's on a Galaxy S10 Plus. Essentially a mini tablet, right?
Yeah, the Galaxy line of phones is some of the largest on the market in terms of screen size.
Yeah, and if I'm having trouble reading text on that, right?
Yeah.
So it took me a while to figure out, exactly why I should be leveling, because it talks about leveling being important, but nobody could really highlight the why. Because whenever I would go to the leveling screen, it would just say, okay, it's increasing the space. Okay, why? Why would I want that, right? Because I'm checking back every few hours to grab stuff and race a little bit. Because in the very beginning of the game, you're running only one car. So the amount of fuel that you have is more than enough to be able to get to the next level. And once your overall team levels up, your fuel resets. So, it was, okay, why do I want this, right?
Right. Well, also, I don't know if there's a free version of the first game. I got the paid version that was like $2 or $3. So I didn't have fuel. I didn't have any kind of stamina. Just like, I mean, there's only so much you can do per week, because as weeks roll by and you get towards races, like, you know, you kind of have to pick and choose what you're going to work on. But then the race comes and you do the races, and then you get, you know, 2 or 3 weeks before the next race to
okay, this is completely different then,
stuff.
because okay, how this works is that they're basing it around the stamina system, so you're able to race as much as you want as long as you have fuel for it. You spend fuel taking your cars out to the race, and also international races, which are typically higher level stuff, require more fuel because you're going, you know, across country or across continents, you know. So, but they also have not really a daily race because it cycles 4 times a day, but a set of races that pop up that are a lot more difficult, but they give better rewards. And you get a particular thing for just completing the race, and then another thing if you win the race. So, for example, you may get experience eggs, which is the one of the ways to level up. You could throw pretty much anything at an item or a car to level it up, but eggs give more experience, and also certain items are essentially a multiplier for certain parts or certain cars. Or you could just build another car or buy another of that part. So, for example, if you want to level up an engine, you could just buy another engine from the shop for the free currency and throw them together, and it gives you enough experience to level it up quite a bit. Or you could get eggs, either from racing, or you actually get a chicken coop, all right? And you feed the chickens grain. But in order to get grain, you either have to buy it from the shop for the premium currency, or you go into versus races, which is essentially a pseudo PvP, but you're not exactly head to head. It's essentially a ghost of other players.
Mm-hmm.
And you go in, and depending on how you place, you get a certain amount of grain, but that also cuts into your stamina. So it's, you know, I never was maxed out on the amount of grain I had for my chickens.
So this sounds exactly like another one of the Kairosoft games that I've played before, which is Skyforce Unite. And I'm not going to talk about it very much, but that's a turn-based air combat RPG where you're like an air mercenary squad. But this sounds like a lot of the systems that they have in that game, just themed
where it
around
has
cars instead.
Yeah, where it has a bit of a town management system going on.
Yeah, because you've got a base in Skyforce Unite that you have to build, and like people to recruit to manage things. And
yeah, there is
you can level up buildings to get more fuel and things to do dailies and stuff. This sounds a lot more like that.
Well, it's just that a bad thing or not?
I don't think so. I mean, I played Skyforce Unite a ton a couple of years ago. I've talked about it on the show before in pretty big depth. But I mean, I played it just like a regular old video game for 3 or 4 weeks. I got very far in that game.
Well, I've played it for about a week now, and I'm on the second town, essentially. So once you get to a certain rank, the mayor of a nearby town comes in and says, hey, we'd like you to relocate your team to this town. It's a bigger place, so you'll have a second car. Which is kind of a double-edged sword in more than one way, because, of course, it's going to eat up more fuel, so you're taking bigger chunks of your fuel out, but you get more experience for your overall team. But this is my biggest problem with the game, is that the AI for your teammates is fucking idiotic. All right? I haven't talked about the actual racing yet. And the reason for that is that there's not a lot of racing going on. It's all stat driven. So you're just kind of sitting there watching and giving commands. Sort of like how Motorsport Manager works. All right? Only really toned down. After leveling up enough, you have the option to tell them to use nitro, which nitro is very slow to get. So, it's a very situational thing. You tell them to slam on the brakes. You tell them to use curves, like a Formula 1 car. And or you could tell them to use their aura, which pops up occasionally after a race. And the higher level the character, the driver or the mechanic, the better their aura gets. So I've had blue auras until like today, and I just got a pink one, which is a higher level one, which infers a bigger stat boost. So whenever you're racing, you have the qualifying, which also sets the stats for that race. There's a little bit of a range for your character. Each of the characters have their set stats, but then it's based off the car, weather conditions, track conditions, the type of track, because some cars are actually more suited for certain types of track, and also different grades of car are better suited for certain situations. Like, I just recently went to go-karts, essentially. And statistically, they're worse than what my better cars were. But because they're a higher grade, they had a multiplier hidden in them. And they have a bonus to on-road racing that my other car did not. And the game doesn't really tell you any of this. It's kind of figuring out as you go along, which I don't have a problem with, but the game doesn't convey the information all that well. And at times tells you conflicting information, like the curse system. All right, the curse system has two tooltips two loading screen tips, which first world problems. I've had trouble actually reading the loading screen tips because my phone loads the game too quickly. Right?
Right. First world problem.
But, okay. The two tooltips are use curves to maintain momentum going around corners. All right? And I'm translating a little bit because the game has some English going on with it, where there's some rather rough translation from time to time. And let's just put it this way. The official Twitter feed for this is completely Japanese, so, all right?
Right.
But then they say only use curves when you're going at speed, essentially. So at a high velocity. Aren't those two conflicting things?
Yes.
And
I would say so.
Yeah, and this is the only situation, but it's the most egregious that I saw. That, it's trying to figure out what the hell.
So just another quick comparison to the first game. Even though there's not a lot of driving options, there's way more than you get in the first one. You don't get any. It's 100% stat-based. I think the only thing you can do is to tell your driver to drive hard, so they'll drive more aggressively, but there's a chance they'll make mistakes and crash, or to drive normally.
Yeah, and this one...
But you definitely...
You have essentially direct control over your driver slamming on the brakes, using the curves, using boost, or using the aura, which they could use the aura during the qualifying as well to get an overall stat boost for that race, or hold it for the race for essentially like a super bunch of acceleration. I've honestly found it better to be using it during qualifying so you get an overall boost.
Yeah.
But,
there's no nitro in the first one,
Mm-hmm.
and the aura just triggers automatically. And you get a higher chance of getting it the more you level up your drivers, or if you match like a particular driver and car to a particular race. It's good. So, using one of the off-road cars for an off-road race, or a driver that's good with off-road vehicles, put him in the off-road car.
For me, I've had it triggering randomly, as far as I could tell. But also have a mechanic that has the cheerleader ability. All the different characters have different abilities that they can unlock. Like, a mechanic can have the test driver ability. So, whenever you're actually creating a car, one of the steps that you eventually unlock, I haven't unlocked it yet, is taking it out for a test drive. Well, you could send your driver out, or you could send a mechanic out with the test driver ability, and they may give better information and better feedback to boost your car more. There's flat out boosts to the various aspects of the car. There's flat out boosts to different types of cars. One of my drivers, they have a quick start ability, so they pretty much get like a Mario Kart-esque boost off the start line. You know what I'm talking about? Like the perfect start on Mario Kart?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But my other driver has a boost whenever she's tailing a rival. So she's essentially drifting, or drafting, sorry. Drafting behind the opponent's cars and then pulling out beside them and quickly passing them. So, there's a little bit of, figuring out, okay, who do I want to actually, focus on? Even though you can switch between the two drivers, it can be a little bit cumbersome to keep track of. But like I said, the AI can be a little bit cumbersome because there's been several races I've lost, either flat out or lost positions on, because my two drivers start fighting one another for a position. Coming into a corner and one driver just bumps the other one and slams her into the into the tires. Takes a bunch of damage on the car as well. I'm like, son of a bitch. Right?
Right. I'm sure that happened in the first one because your two drivers can sort of jockey for position. Yeah, but I don't remember that happening.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I could, micromanage them better to prevent it, but it's one of those things that you don't want to also, interfere with their momentum if you don't have to. Especially the driver that gets a good boost off of following another driver. Because there was a few races that I would micromanage the other one, the quick start girl.
Yeah.
And essentially just drag her teammate along for the ride. Because she'd be drafting off the other car. And she would just follow along. Most of the races are single lap. There are a couple very short tracks that are multi-lap, but they seem to be the exception to the rule. So far I've unlocked, I would say 6 different cars, and I'm coming up at like level 25, 26. The big problem I have with it, though, seems to be loot boxes. It seems like a lot of the parts for the game are either locked away behind a lot of research, which I will get to the research in a little bit, or you get them via loot box, which is the premium currency. Even though they are very generous with the premium currency, it's still frustrating. Because, just how long can you play for free before, you get the big grind wall, which I feel like I'm coming up towards. But also, I've been playing for a week. On and off, of course.
Right.
So, it's kind of figuring out, have I had enough fun that, the fact that even though they have loot boxes in it, it didn't impact the balance that much? I don't know. I will say that overall, they have been very generous with the premium currency. At one point, I had something like $20 worth of free currency that I've just won on races.
Mm-hmm.
And the, for lack of a better term, daily race, or the timed race, often have at least a little bit of the premium currency in them as either just a completion event or for winning the thing. And that's when they don't have research or they have some sort of other very valuable item. So there is progression still available, but it also is one of those things that I'm not unlocking a lot of parts. I've had V8 engines for like the last 4 or 5 days now. And that's the second engine I've unlocked. So just, when am I going to get more parts, right?
Right.
And there's an entire section of the research tree that I haven't even seen parts for. And I have the option to research them, or to improve them. So there's 2 sections of research, all right? You have research points and you have bananas. All right. One of the sections of research powered by bananas is via this building that's full of monkeys. No, I'm not joking. And it's essentially a flat upgrade, and it also unlocks research for the other section of the research system, which is the traditional research points that you probably had in the first game.
Yeah. Probably.
So, the monkeys, they take a while, but the only way to get bananas is via your fans, which you rank up your following of fans via doing well in races, and you get experience points for the fans. And once you follow up a level, they send you a gift, and sometimes it's a banana. Because, that'd be totally be okay on the mail, right?
Absolutely.
Anyway, you feed the monkeys and they unlock the other research, which is probably like how the other game ran research, which is powered by research points that you do get them from races occasionally, but that seems to be the exception to the rule. Disassembling cars, essentially pulling completed cars apart, or via your character class. Whenever you start a new game, you have a choice of something like 4 or 5 different classes that are essentially a background for your main characters, the owner of the race team. And it seemed like I chose wisely because I decided, getting research is probably going to be very important in this game. So I picked that. So once a day, I get something like 40 some research points, which is still a pretty good chunk in this game. It's enough to teach a character like 2 rank 1 abilities or 1 rank 2 ability. To give you an idea. That's a fair amount, right? For free.
Yeah.
But the projects which also unlock via just ranking up are essentially research projects for the team. So it ties up a particular team for however long, usually somewhere between 15 minutes to an hour or some time. It does seem like there's going to be ones that are much longer, but I haven't hit any just yet. But it also seems to be a set timer, and it's not based on the stats of your team. So it's, figuring out, okay, do I have a team that's specialized towards something? If so, I probably want to avoid them. Like, my secondary team is actually my building team. They have a really good mechanic that has the car designer perk that essentially is a multiplier to her stats. And then I have an aerodynamic guy that is good at the wind tunnel that has decent stats. Not amazing, but good enough. So I try to keep that team as free as possible. So the other one gets research duty. Let's see what else. Well, I've talked about 2 of the 3 types of races. There's the third type, which is the Grand Prix, which is probably what was in the original game as well. It's a timed race, or a set of timed races, I should say, where right now it's 5 races, or at least the last one I completed. It seems to be tied to the progression, at least to some degree. That and unlocking licenses, which is just a fee to try to beat a track in a particular amount of time. It's essentially a power gate, Yeah, if you can't beat the track in this amount of time, you have no business going forward, right?
Right.
So the Grand Prix is actually probably one of the more interesting modes. So you have a set of, right now it's 5 races. It was 3 to start with, then it's 4, so it's probably going to be more as I continue on. And you have a set amount of time between each race. So it's also kind of a check on just your overall managerial skills. Just, do you have enough resources being produced to make it through the Grand Prix or the set of Grand Prix races? And do you have enough cars for the particular types? Like the last one I did, it was 4 races. No, the last one was 5 races. The one before it was the 4. And it started with 2 off-road races. So I had to make sure my buggies, my off-road cars, were repaired enough to make the second race. Then there was a single on-road race for the carts. Then it went to an ice race. So I needed my buggies again. So it was a little bit of a strategic decision. Okay, do I repair up the carts to prepare for the last race? Or do I try to keep the buggies more give the buggies more health because they just had 2 races and then they have a third one in between this and the last race. Which I actually enjoyed the, kind of, weighing the pros and cons of. Each race has a timer in between it that you cannot skip. I might want to add, which I don't see why you'd want to skip it, because a lot of this is checking how much fuel you have, how much nitro you have if you're producing nitro. If you could repair your cars well enough to be able to make the next race or survive the next race, because if your cars go to 0, they could, explode. Not sure if that could kill the driver, actually. We have to check that.
That would be interesting.
But it's, a lot of strategic decisions on the Grand Prix, and it makes it a lot tougher than just a series of races. But you could also go off and do other things while the Grand Prix is running. So you have that decision. Okay, I'm close to leveling up. If I don't level up, I'm not going to have enough fuel. Try to figure out how exactly to handle things. So, there's a lot of interesting strategic decisions when it comes to the Grand Prix mode. And also leveling up cars. The leveling up the cars does not take time and does not tie up your team, but enhancing your cars does. And it's kind of a weird system where, let's just take the engines for example, where as you level up your engine, it improves your speed and acceleration, as you may expect, right? Bigger engine goes vroom more. Well, if you level up your engine and give it a +1, it actually de-levels your engine, but it still gives you better stats. And the reason for that is that it's a sequence of levels. Each level is harder to hit. But that also, once again, ties up your team to be able to build up the engine. And if you're running multiple cars, you'll want to do a lot of different engines. And you also have to have the materials to do that, plus the research points, which you could be running through the research system to get more upgrades. And you can see where things get a little crazy, huh?
Yeah.
So I'm taking this as very different than the first game?
Extremely different. They're like pretty much 2 completely different games that just share a similar aesthetic and general goal. But all the research is completely different. Car building is different. The way the races actually take place are different. It sounds like leveling your drivers is different.
Yeah, leveling the drivers, they still get levels from the doing races, as does mechanics, but you could also build a building that you spend money and time with to level your mechanics. I assume the drivers will eventually get one as well, but the mechanics seem to be more of a focus on this game because they're the ones that what derives your car's different stats. So the building process is, this is the developer that made Game Dev Story. So you probably know how this is going to go, where it's a set of 3 variables. And depending on where you focus or what drivetrain you build on this one is where the kind of the focus for that car goes. But also the drivetrain can change the focus of the car or change what type of race that car is suitable for. For example, I mentioned buggies earlier. Dune buggies, essentially. Well, depending on the drivetrain you take, it can make the Dune buggy very well suited for off-road racing, but terrible for everything else. Or you could make it for a more variable race, or a race situation, but it's not nearly as strong, jack of all trades, master of none situation. I take it that's not in the first game?
No, not really. They just have stats that relate to different things. Well, I guess you could do that. You could focus their stats on something, but
well, this is based around for now. They may introduce more things later on because, like I said, I'm still progressing in this, and the fact that I haven't put a single penny into this game outside of ad revenue, of course, because of course it has ads, right? There's an ad on startup, either for one of their other games, or like a 5-second ad for something on Google Play. And then there's a banner at the bottom. That's how I've paid my time. All right.
Yeah.
I would say probably the most egregious monetization is the loot box system, just because just how much are they bouncing around that? Trying to think if there's anything else that was really highlighted here. Occasionally there's boxes that you could tap on the screen during a race. They are not loot boxes, and they are not timed boxes like Elder Scrolls Blades. It's literally you tap them as they go by and you get an item immediately. Usually some sort of useful item as well. Level up eggs, that sort of thing. I will say that progression has slowed down quite a bit, but also I think I hit like this valley where I was not quite strong enough for the next race, but I was too strong for all the previous races so it wasn't really a challenge anymore. But right before recording tonight, I went through 2 licenses pretty much back to back. But also, it may have just been because of how my research has kind of panned out, because I have my buggies as level 2 buggies, or buggies +1 essentially. So my off-road racing abilities are very strong, but my on-road racing abilities were not, because I just didn't have the research to be able to boost my carts enough. And once you get past a certain point on just the level system, it kind of slows down unless you start getting really good parts. So that may have just been how things panned out for me.
Gotcha.
Oh, there is a friend system as well, where I'm pretty sure the game requires an internet connection, but I actually didn't check that. Just didn't want to wrap my phone in tinfoil,
Yeah, the first one did not.
Well, this has a friend system that it seems to connect to whenever it starts up, but I'm not sure if it maintains it. Where every friend that you have, which also pops up at the beginning of the game, that you could send a friend request to a random person. And I've actually gotten a few as well. For every friend you have, it sends you a gem of one of 3 shapes, either circle, triangle, or square. And you could slot those into essentially an augment system for your team that gives a flat bonus to speed, acceleration, handling, boost the environment for your essentially town builder. Because all the buildings have some sort of bonus for the exception is like the construction team, the construction building that the team comes out of to build everything else. They're like one of the few things that doesn't get a bonus for environment. But a flat bonus there, a flat bonus to downforce, which I don't have a car that is affected by that yet. So you get a sort of pseudo secondary progression system as you just get random friend invites, which is interesting, right? But I wonder, if the game has a long tail on it, if that's going to be a problem in the future whenever people have moved on from this, and how much they bounced around that. But any questions?
No, I don't think so.
I think overall I've enjoyed it, but I have been frustrated by it as well. Just because, my teammates doing something stupid, or, spending a lot of my in-game currency to build cars that, I just don't get good dice rolls for. But, that's the nature of the beast, right?
Right.
I will say that if you are impatient, this is not a game for you, because there are a lot of timers, especially in the beginning, just building out your first few buildings. And it takes quite a while to be able to start producing nitro for the boosts. There is a shop item that gives you a little bit of nitro for in-game currency. Well, I should say the free currency. But it seems like the nitro is what really they trying to bank on people buying. That, or just rolls of the loot box. But I've just really, it's become a too good to use situation. So I just don't use it and save it for the very hard races, and just let the chips fall where they may for the others, or just use curse. Oh, that is one other thing, is that the curse, it maintains between races, which I found really weird.
Okay.
And it works like curse in real life, where as the car slows down, brakes, it builds up essentially a battery of accelerators to use later. In real life, that doesn't work like that. So the fact that you could essentially run easy races to kind of build up your curves, and then go tackle a hard race is a way to do a pseudo turbocharge. But then again, I don't know when to use it because it tells me two different things.
That's an interesting thing. Interesting, I don't know, contradiction, self-contradiction or something.
I think the curve system in it is a way to get players to kind of go back to the earlier races that are very easy, just to build it up, and then tackle a hard race without having to use the turbo or the nitro boost,
Yeah. Grinding a little bit for a boost.
Which, it also gives the experience, and it gives the money, so, and you do occasionally get items that bump up the difficulty on individual races. And also, just because I'm running two cars, my income also not quite doubled, but close to it, because, it's based on individual position. So, first and second doesn't give quite double the money,
Yeah.
I would say a good, kind of time waster. They do give a free taste of the loot box system, which is manipulative. But then again, that's a very low. That's a very unscummy move in mobile gaming these days, huh?
It's just par for the course. Okie dokie. So, me again?
Yeah.
So you talked about this for longer than I think I'm going to talk about EVE Online.
Oh, that's a shock.
I don't have a ton. I mean, just in case you've never heard of EVE Online before, maybe and also you're unaware of my history with it, new listener to the podcast or something like that.
I'm sorry.
EVE Online is a space MMO with a nearly 100% player-driven economy where everything except some very, very, very basic items are completely 100% crafted by the player base. It's ammo, weapons, ships, upgrade items, like everything is crafted by the players, and then market value is determined 100% by supply and demand, and things such as that. I mean, there's market manipulation, and then there's a lot of very real-world parallels that come into play in EVE Online, just because you can do things like manipulate the market in this game to earn shitloads of money. Every once in a while, there's a big old battle where that they compare like how much real-world money was lost in game if you went and converted the currencies out. Because there's a couple of things that you can purchase. The primary one being Plex, which is this game's sort of premium currency. Plex has always been a thing in EVE, but it's much more so now because they have a free-to-play model, where previously you could either buy game time like a traditional MMO, pay for a monthly subscription, or you could buy Plex from other players and then use that to activate 1 month of game time. So it was a way to help, you could play for free before if you worked very hard and did a lot of grinding, or were very high up in a corporation, which is this game's equivalent of guilds, or, figured out ways to cheat the system or whatever to get the Plex. Like you could, gank people and steal it from them in order to get game time and things like that. Most of the time players didn't fly around with it on their ships, but every once in a while you'd get somebody who was doing that, so you could get a bunch of game time by doing that.
Carrying the neon sign, kill me?
Yeah, basically it's carrying a kill me, because people would do just about anything even like get themselves blown up and lose tons of equipment and stuff in order to get a plex from somebody. Because if you attack someone unprovoked in high security space, which is basically the PvE zones of the game, like purely PvE, the in-game police descend upon you immediately and they're invincible. But if you're fast enough and have a powerful enough ship, you can gank somebody, and then someone can come up behind you and just scoop up the remains and get that plex. So you could coordinate to do some piracy in high security space and still come out on top, because it's, you know, basically you just scored 15 real world dollars worth of in-game stuff that you could sell for a shitload of in-game cash, or just use to use yourself in order to get a month of game time. So that's kind of always existed, but the game has got a free-to-play option, and the accounts are separated into Alpha and Omega, with the Alpha being the free-to-play character that has some restrictions. Most of the heavy economy-bound stuff in the game, the Alpha level, or the free players can't do. You have very limited mining, harvesting, planetary interaction, and very minor marketing stuff. You have reduced market slots to buy and sell from. And that's mostly done as a way to prevent a whole bunch of people creating free-to-play accounts and manipulating the markets. There's also some very high-level spaceships you don't have access to if your account is in alpha state. Even if you previously had the Omega state, which was paying for monthly access or paying for game time by a Plex or something. So you don't like lose those skills, you still keep them, but you can no longer utilize them. So there's ship types you can't use, but you can use all the way up to battleships for any of the races. You have to sort of pick one and specialize in it to get all the way up to battleship in it. But as a free player, you can use battleships and all of the tier 1 tech equipment, which is the basic unspecialized stuff. So a huge part of the game is open to free players. You can do exploration, you can do combat, you can do mission running. There's still a good deal of mining you can do on sort of the lower end. So if you do want to do some of that, there are some builds you can get into on the free-to-play side that makes it viable as like a way to fund yourself as a single character. You wouldn't contribute much to a corporation or be able to really play for free that way. But you could do some basic stuff to get yourself gear and earn steady income that way. But I would say probably 80% of the game is completely available to free players. They've made some changes since this program was introduced, and this is sort of where it's at now. So a large portion of the game is open or free to people who want to play for free. My personal history with the game is I have had a very big problem in the past with Eve. I don't have a traditionally addictive personality, but I had a big problem with Eve and spending so much time in it and basically letting it consume my life for a while. And a couple of years ago, I just quit because that was the best thing for me at the time. I was moving, I was starting a new job. Before, when I had really played Eve, I was still in school, working on my master's degree, sitting in class for long periods of time, doing my internship, seeing clients at a much lower frequency. I didn't have as much going on with my family. My kid was still in the baby to early toddler stages, so he didn't really do very much. But, all of that stuff started to change, and I was, getting more responsibilities, basically, and Eve was unbalancing my life because I was focusing too much on it. And so I just dropped it, and I didn't play for a little over 2 years. And they recently had a free weekend. You could get 1 week. No, what was it? You got a starter pack, which came with some ships and some equipment and a couple of other things. But the thing that I would get the most out of was the 1 week of Omega time for your character, your Steam character or your Steam account. Because I've got 2 Eve accounts. One is a Steam-based account, and the other one is much older from before it was on Steam. So it's actually through, their site, and I have to log in using, a username and a password as opposed to it just being linked to my Steam account. So the Steam one is Omega, and the non-Steam one is Alpha. So I was able to kind of do some comparison between the two with that. But I had been wanting to kind of check it out again anyways, and just kind of see, like, have I changed and become, more mature as an adult and have better willpower to not let it sort of do that. My life is completely different from where it was before in a number of ways. And the way I play games has changed a lot. I do a lot more during sort of the day when I'm at work and things like that. I do a lot of sort of passive gaming, more mobile gaming when I have downtime between clients. At nighttime, a lot of the games that I play when I'm unwinding are things that just sort of allow me to decompress and listen to podcasts while I play them. Eve is a game that's very conducive to that. You can play it fairly passively and still accomplish a lot. And so I was like, well, I wonder, if I can do this. And so far, it's been pretty good. I spent a couple of days over the weekend just sorting through my stuff because I have a shitload of stuff. I mean, someone who's been playing nonstop for, years would obviously have way more than me, but I have basically enough cash and assets to play for about 4 months on Omega time without actually having to spend any real world money. Buying in-game Plex at its current market rate. I could play for 3 or 4 months with what I've got without doing anything else to make money or anything. So I was sorting through all of that. I joined a new corporation so that I could get access to some of the new stuff that's come out in the game. I was going to fly solo, but they've really revamped a bunch of the in-game economy and market for doing things like manufacturing and refining resources. It's much better to be in a corporation for that now than it used to be. So I joined one that's very chill and laid back. And basically I was doing this little experiment that I'm like, I'm going to play it for a week, free, no strings attached, no money involved. Let's see how I do. If I'm doing okay, then I'll probably get 1 month of Omega time using my in-game money and see how it goes for a little long term. Make sure I don't start obsessing over it. But I have been doing really well with it. It hasn't taken over my life like it used to be. I don't know how much of that is I'm very aware of it, so I'm being very careful with it, or if I've just changed a lot as a gamer. It doesn't give me the same sort of tingly feeling it used to, I guess is the best way to say it. It definitely gets closer than like Astrox Imperium, which I talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which sort of sells itself as Eve Offline. And I know what the difference is now, like having played them both sort of back to back, is that Eve does 2 things that no other game can do that I've seen so far. The first is the scale of the game. Like, some of the smaller systems to go from one side to the other are 50 or 60 AU, which is astronomical unit, and 1 AU is roughly 150 million kilometers. So the size of each sector is massive, and there's thousands of sectors that you can inhabit and explore and do things like put, player structures down. You can colonize planets and use them for manufacturing and stuff like that. The huge scope of the game is something that doesn't exist in very many other games, and as far as I'm aware, not in any other space game. The games that get closest to it are the X series, but even they don't quite hit the size that Eve has. And then the other portion is, like, I know that everything that I do is involving other real people. Like, everything that I produce and sell and use to, further my own stuff in game, I know that real people are interacting with that. And that just does something in your brain. Is like, it's more satisfying than grinding for, 10 hours in a single player game for the same sort of thing. And nothing against single player games. Like, this hasn't like made me be like, oh yes, all of this time I've put in Factorio or other games that are similar, like build up resources and do stuff with it. Like, I don't feel like that's a waste. My opinion hasn't changed on those games, but there is an extra little bit of satisfaction that comes from knowing, like, okay, this stuff is being interacted with by other real people, and even if it's like a tiny thing, like, this is making a difference in their gameplay. And that's something that I won't say is not in any other game, but is pretty rare in other games, especially to this scale. So those 2 things missing from games are other games I've tried or have played that are supposed to be sort of in the vein of Eve have not given me that. So I don't know. I think I do this thing where I sit down, like if I'm trying to figure something out and I'm like, okay, so if I was a client seeing me for therapy, what would I tell this person? And so I sat down and I had that little conversation with myself, and you know, this does have some
So you said
potential.
self?
Yes, so self. But you know, this game does carry some potential risks for me, becoming very habitual, addictive, things like that. But it's not on the same level as a drug or alcohol addiction. And I have worked with people before who want to learn how to limit and control their habits better so that they can be, you know, enjoy things that they like, but maintain a more, you know, appropriate balance in their life. And so I set up some boundaries and some guidelines for myself, and have trusted and entrusted people in my life to help me stick with them. Mostly a couple of friends that I see, or several people that I see regularly, like in my actual day-to-day living, like Katie, which is my wife for anyone listening who doesn't know that. And a couple of people that I work with who know that like I play games and stuff on my downtime, to keep an eye to make sure that like my paperwork standards and stuff aren't slipping, to just help keep me in check. And I've been good for 1 week. I picked it up, the free trial thingy, on Thursday. So this Thursday will be 1 week. And as long as I don't have some major disaster between now and then, I'm going to get a month. And if I do well for a month, I'm probably going to subscribe for either 3 months or 6 months, just for that, you know, little bit of a discount that comes from doing it all at the same time. You know, it's not a lot, but a few bucks saved on something that I know I'm going to use is still a few bucks saved. And just go from there. I mean, this isn't something I'm going to talk about every week. I might have like a story here or there, like I used to, of like corporate espionage or whatever. But I tried really hard to pick a very chill, laid back corporation. I don't want to get into any shenanigans. I'm not looking to steal from a bunch of people anymore.
Yet.
Probably. But, you know, I mostly just like want those bonuses and want some friendly people who are also older that are like, hey, we also have lives and kids and jobs and don't play, you know, 80 hours a week and expect you to do that too. So I think I've got that in game, and I've got these systems set up in my life to hopefully keep me in check. And if all goes well, I'll get to go back to enjoying something that I have missed and does help me relax a lot, decompress a lot, and deal with some of the sort of emotional distress I face on a daily basis, because I can just go and like zone out for a little bit, mine some space rocks, check on some planets, do a little exploring, just whatever. And Eve does fit a bunch of different roles. If you want to go be passive for a while, you can be passive. If you want to be active, do some mission running, some combat stuff, or be more sociable, you can do all those things. It's got a nice spread of activities that you can participate in. So I do want to say thanks to the people who were like, hey man, you haven't played Eve in a long time. Is everything okay? I had several people from our community check up on me, and I really appreciate that. You know, I didn't feel like anybody was being pushy or obtrusive. I've talked about it a lot amongst all of us. I've not kept it a secret that it was a problem for me in the past, and who knows, it might still be a problem for me now. And I appreciate that, and it lets me know that you guys care. So thank you very much for the folks who checked up on me.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was being bad or not linking you that.
You were...
I was feeling conflicted.
It's fine. You know, I mean, maybe you were being a little bit naughty, but I'm an adult, you know, and somewhere between all and most of that responsibility for my own actions falls on me. Like, I could have said no. There's been plenty of times I've said no to stuff that I've seen to Eve over the last couple of years. I had to say no when they first announced the free-to-play aspect. I was like, well, I could just be the alpha account that's more restricted. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So, but I mean, I've definitely grown a lot as a person over the last few years, and definitely my life is very different. And those two things, I think, were what really made me be like, you know what? I might dip my toe back in and just make sure, you know, just take it slow and see how it goes. But, I mean, I've been enjoying my time. I really have. And it feels good to be back. Kind of like when I came back to WoW after not playing it for a while. I played that for a few months last year and then moved on from that. This might be that too. I don't know. But it just feels good to not be, at least at this point, so restrictive on myself. But, you know, if somebody sees me playing Eve for like 12 hours straight, please feel free to check in. There's also a good possibility that I went to bed and forgot to close the launcher. That happened to me already because, you know, when you go to launch it, it launches the launcher and then you launch from your account. But I forget all the time. Like, I exit the game and I'm like, okay, the launcher's closed, and it's sitting, you know, on my second monitor, oftentimes behind, you know, whatever else I was doing, Discord, a YouTube video, something, and then it just stays there open. So if I've been playing Eve for 12 hours, just be like, hey, are you okay? Did you leave the launcher on, or are you playing? Have you been playing for 12 hours? And if I don't respond, then that means I left the launcher on. If I do respond,
or you've gone,
I promise to be honest.
Or you've gone off the deep end.
Yeah, I mean, if I've got off the deep end, I promise to be honest with you. You being collectively anybody who asks, not just you, Rage.
The common you. It's the opposite of the royal we.
Indeed. So yeah, that's games that we played this week.
What's like our next topic?
Sure, we can just jump on in on that. That's fine. There'll be a smash cut or something. You try and read this one off. I fucked it up hardcore for the intro. I'm not sure I got it right the second time either, but...
How about the secret server for City of Heroes? Secret City of Heroes emulator operators address score leak drama, rebut personal info database rumor.
Yeah, you did it.
Yeah, but I also went slower than you.
That's true, you did. Yeah.
So City of Heroes, that was a thing back in the day.
That was literally about what I was about to say. I was about to say, so City of Heroes, that was a thing.
Yeah, well, outside of a select group, I don't think a lot of people really paid attention to City of Heroes after it shut down because it was really popular for a while, then it kind of trailed off. Like this was City of Heroes, I think it was a victim of coming out at the wrong time because it was right before the big resurgence of superheroes. Superheroes were popular, don't get me wrong, but this was before the Marvel Universe really started kicking off. You know, there was the first couple Spider-Man movies, and I think that was about it. Maybe Iron Man?
No, Iron Man was like 2007 or 2008. City of Heroes released in 2004.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about when it shut down.
2004. Yeah, let's see.
It shut down in 2012.
November 30th, 2012. So this was right after or right before the first Avengers movie.
So in other words, about the worst time to shut down a superhero MMO, right?
Yeah.
That was still making money. That's the thing. That's the thing that always got me was they shut it down while it was still profitable. I mean, I realize athletes want to go out on top, but MMOs, really?
Yeah, right after April 11th, 2012 was when Avengers came out.
So pretty much
May 4th
as soon as everybody realized, hey, wait a minute, superheroes are a thing, they shut down essentially the premier superhero MMO.
Yeah. Not the only. There were a couple others. There
Yeah.
was City of Villains as well.
Well, City of Villains was an expansion to City of Heroes. It was essentially the same thing. It was kind of a smooshed together thing.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was its own game that was like the same, but like, you know, you could get like City of Heroes or City of Villains.
No.
I never played them. I was aware of them, but I never played them.
I was interested in it, but this was during a time that I was not playing MMOs. And I was like, do I really want to pay buy in and then pay a subscription to see if I like it? And I decided not to, and then they shut it down, so that didn't really matter.
Yeah,
But
this was during the time when I was playing WoW, and then shortly after transitioned to EVE Online.
yeah,
So,
and that's the thing is that MMOs typically are, a person plays one subscription MMO and that's it.
mm-hmm.
You'll get the odd duck every so often, but usually it's one per person.
Yeah.
So during this, towards the end of City of Heroes' lifespan, a private server initiative was kicked off to build, a private server. For those who don't know, it's essentially a hacked-together server run by players to emulate a live server. Usually either for a very specific reason or just to cheat to just, goof off in the game. WoW has them. EverQuest had them. Pretty much any MMO you can think of either has or had them. So this initiative was kicked off just before City of Heroes, had the plug pulled. And they kind of went underground for the last, 8 years?
Yeah, so 2012 to 2019, so 7 years.
So the fact that they kept this a secret is amazing, one. But whenever you hear about how they kept it secret, it's not exactly a big shock. And click here to find out how.
10 reasons why.
Number 7 will mystify you. So, essentially, they were doing invite-only, trolling and I use the old form of trolling, just looking at people and figuring out, hunting for people that were players back in the day and would personally invite them with an NDA, essentially a gentleman's agreement at this point, to keep the server secret. And anybody that leaked it, they had a few of the people that were playing it were mods of the subreddit and would delete conversations about it and actually gaslight people, saying that they were lying and crazy. I mean, this is just astonishing, isn't it? This is Eve level crazy, right?
This is conspiracy theory levels of stuff.
This is on a level that Eve could only dream of with this time scale.
Yeah.
So, one of the people decided, it's not fun keeping the game to myself, and he leaked it. And he also revealed a couple interesting things. One, the mods of the subreddit being behind a cover-up of it, but also the fact that they have the personal info, or at least the character info, of the old live game, which is a huge, huge concern to me.
Yeah, there's varying levels of potential concern depending on how much stuff they have from the old game, but having the character data and you were needing your old login information
or at least the old name, the old character name, what essentially server you're on, your login ID. Essentially, they were vetting you based off of a backup from the live game. And if you played back in the day, and actually, I don't know if you had to be a certain level or not. I would assume so if they were, making sure, it was people that were dedicated to the game. Because the guy that did the video that's going to be in the article that's going to be in the show notes, vglpodcast.podbean.com, ding, he brought in, or tried to bring in, several people, and only a few actually made it through the vetting process. And I'm not 100% sure what the actual requirements are, because, it was the admins of the server that were doing it. So it's, the fact that they had that info, though, and could probably go look and see, okay, well, this guy was, he was a low-level player. We don't want him. Gatekeeping, essentially, right?
Yeah.
It's just crazy, huh? The fact that...
Yeah, the level of everything that went into this, the level of conspiracy that went into this.
The secret server. Oh, show title?
The secret server?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
Plus, it is reminiscent of the Secret Wars.
From Marvel?
Mm-hmm. See, I know a little bit of Marvel.
You do? Good job.
To be fair, that was highlighted on the Spider-Man animated series in the 90s.
Yeah, there was the Secret Wars and that had to do with the Skrulls when they had infiltrated everyone and everything. I won't get off on comic stuff, actually. I'm just gonna stop before I get started.
Well, this version of the Secret War, it involved about I want to say like 10 different pseudo random Marvel characters, because you had Iron Man in there, which back then wasn't a big character, or wasn't a big character in the public conscious. The random X-Men they picked, I think it was Storm, because Storm was a very popular one, right?
The X-Men have always been really popular.
Yeah, but Storm?
Storm may have been in and out of favor. Like, Wolverine,
this was
Magneto.
This was during the animated series for the X-Men. So the big ones were Wolverine that they pushed in Jubilee as like the viewer insert character.
Yeah,
Cyclops was still a douche though.
Yeah, always. Cyclops is always a dick. But yeah, I mean, this is a huge article that I would and there's like a 30-minute YouTube video that if you're really
that I only got
really
about
interested,
halfway through.
Yeah, I read through most of the article, but some of it I don't understand because I didn't play the game. So there's some things they're talking about I'm like not 100% sure. Like,
or there was also some comments on r/games that was saying that they were running a money shop as well, which that's trouble.
Yeah.
Because usually the way that they get around it is through copyrights and intellectual property is saying that it's fair use. Well, fair use is based around not making money on it, for one. Or, that's one, essentially sniff. So, it's... There's if you're interested in this is a deep rabbit hole you could go down.
Yeah.
But this does prove that you can keep these projects secret, and that's something that we talked about quite a bit before. Whenever other fan games would pop up and get a cease and desist, is that you don't announce a fan game until you're releasing it. Well,
yeah, or until right after you released it. That way, it can be widespread and much more difficult to stamp out.
But I imagine that this is going to be popping up probably again in either, if not next week, then the week after, because I imagine this is going to get a cease and desist because Tabula Rasa, NCSoft's other MMO that they killed. Remember, this was Richard Garriott's MMO shooter. It had a fan project as well, which I know is shocking. Yes, there were fans of that game. See what I did there?
I see what you did there.
Sorry, the only thing I know of Tabula Rasa is, well, for one, it means blank slate, but also Yahtzee's video of it. Actually, I haven't watched Yahtzee's stuff in a while.
Yeah, I keep up with him.
Well,
I don't watch everything. Occasionally, there's something I'm not interested in, but I watch most of his stuff.
I haven't watched in quite a bit, but then again, the Escapist magazine's website, it seems like their video player just hates me.
Oh, I just watch it on YouTube. It's a week behind when it goes up on the Escapist, but I don't care about that.
But anyway, they saw what happened with Tabula Rasa. That's why they went underground in the first place, because they wanted to have the private server, and then it turned out to, be like the safe harbor for City Heroes. Yeah. It's just it's a fascinating thing that they've pulled off. And I understand why these companies usually have to shut down these private servers, even if the MMO is dead, because, usually there's some sort of proprietary software or framework going on that they can't license out, so they have to shut it down.
Yeah,
because most of these MMOs, they don't build everything in house. So they license out the engine or license out the networking code, and the fact that they can't give a license to that, kind of torpedoes a lot of these projects. I understand that. I still think it sucks. Don't get me wrong, but I understand it.
Yeah. Well, I talked about Perpetuum a few weeks ago, which is a game that is the developers just passed on the code to some very interested fans, and we're like, here, you do it, because they owned all the rights to their own game, and so when they had to shut it down for financial reasons, they could just pass it off and choose not to take legal action, and that's what they did, and that's
essentially giving up the copyright.
Yeah, and that's been running for a couple of years at this point, and I mean anybody can get access to the code and start their own server. Like I mentioned, there's the official one. Or the official fan server?
The pseudo official.
Yeah. As close to official as it can officially be one. But, if I wanted to, I could start my own private Perpetuum server.
Lowercase O and official.
Yeah. But, I mean, I in some ways, I really like this story. It's like, wow, a group of very passionate people who wanted to protect their game from legal action and stuff, kept this huge secret for years on the internet. But on the other hand, there's some shitty gatekeeping, and there's potentially, they've got a lot of people's private information, but, and sure, it's the internet, everybody's identity's been stolen at least once, yada yada, blah, 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 but it's like, I don't want to make it easier for someone if the data falls into the wrong hands and it has stuff in it that it, shouldn't. So, there's stuff in this that's like, oh, that's neat, and stuff in this that's like, that's really shitty.
And I'm just looking through the comments on Reddit, and there's people attacking the guy for leaking it, saying that he's kind of shitty for leaking it, but at the same time, he does make a good point that, it's a secret that the fact that they've gatekept this, gatekeeped, whatever the proper past tense is, for so long, and have made essentially a closed pool of players that it's not as fun as a wide open MMO. And I definitely see that. And I can see why people are also pissed at them for, basically going to get this server shut down. I'll be shocked if they don't issue a cease and desist.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be really surprised if that doesn't happen sooner rather than later. Maybe.
Yeah, because this only
probably
broke
before this episode even goes live.
Yeah, this broke within the last day. So I don't know if, there's been an update to this or not. But the fact that, I can see why people would be pissed about losing their server. But at the same time, the fact that they had the mods of the subreddit gaslighting people. I mean, we get enough gaslighting in politics. We don't need it in our video games as well. Even though, gotta be fair, that the major publishers do kind of pull that one on us as well. So,
yeah.
Well, we don't need more. How about that?
Yeah. Agreed. We definitely don't need more of it.
But does that move us on to our kind of general topic? That it's kind of related to this. Just something that kind of is like, right?
Yeah. Sort of, we got to talking a little bit about this, and, essentially, well, why aren't there more superhero games? What is it about them that makes them not successful or whatever?
Well, not to say that they're not successful. I mean, I think that's a little bit unfair. How about, why are they not more popular? Because, we do have superhero games out there. We have DC Online still. But that's more popular on consoles than PC, as far as I could tell. But it's still chugging along. There's Champions Online, but that never had the popularity. It's kind of a secondary thing.
Probably the most popular, successful superhero games in recent memories are the Lego ones. Lego Marvel and Lego DC.
Yeah, which, the Lego games are their own, little playground. I would say Marvel. Shoot the ARPG
Marvel Heroes.
Marvel Heroes, yeah. I would say that was pretty popular for a while until they got that got axed. And I think that was due to licensing.
I'm not sure. There's Marvel Puzzle Quest, which is a mobile title, which is Puzzle Quest but Marvel themed. That's pretty good.
Actually, I didn't check that.
There's the new Iron Man VR game.
Yeah, Disney
coming.
cut the license for it. For Marvel Heroes. That's why it shut down.
There's the new Iron Man VR game that's coming. What else is there that's superhero? I mean, Batman.
I mean, if we open it up,
games.
I mean, we have Deadpool from a while back.
Yeah.
Which was
got re-released or remastered or whatever it was they did with it.
But I would say that the reason why we don't get a lot of hero games, one is just licensing, because licensing costs for these are just absurdly expensive. Because it's multi-billion-dollar properties, right?
Yeah,
especially if you go to something like Spider-Man.
Especially now.
I mean, we do have the recent Spider-Man game, but that's not really telling the story of the cinematic Spider-Man. It's like its own little side story, right?
Yeah.
I forgot about the Spider-Man game because it was a PlayStation.
I did too. It's a PlayStation exclusive. Yeah.
But
okay, so there's a new Marvel Ultimate Alliance game coming out this year.
Okay, so there is some out there, but there's one thing in common with all of these. Licensing. We don't see any kind of create your own hero games. It's something like Infamous. Remember that?
Yeah.
Or and there was. Now I'm blanking on the other one that was kind of. It was released at the same time. Oh, damn it!
I think I know which one you're talking about. I think because you can transform into a monster or something, and
you had like a symbiote or something.
Yeah,
it was on the PlayStation 2. It's gonna bug me if I don't find it, so I'm gonna have to try to find it.
Well, you can look for that while I talk for a second. I think licensing definitely an issue for a lot of third-party developers. But I mean, Marvel Studios, for example, has got all the money and is owned by Disney. Yeah, Prototype. And is owned by Disney, who has all of the fucking money. So licensing from that perspective, like if the game were to be successful, wouldn't be as much of an issue between the two of them. I think one problem that video game movies had, or not video game movies, superhero video games had, although that's kind of like a Freudian slip for the point I'm about to make, but was that a lot of times they were just made, like in recent memory, a lot of them were made as just video game tie-in movies. Because the Marvel first wave movies, Thor, Captain America, Iron Man 2, I guess Iron Man 2's, no, yeah, that's in the first wave. Iron Man 2 and, there's one more, Captain America, he had one. They were all just really shitty movie tie-in games. Most of them were kind of generic third-person action games. A lot of them didn't even have any of the actual actors from the films. And I mean, they did use the Marvel animated series voice actors, which I think are great, but a large chunk of that audience was coming from the movies, not from the comic books or the animated series. So they want to hear, if they're playing those games, they want to hear Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth and, etc. And
you just added a zero to your budget.
Yeah. I mean, you did definitely just add a zero to your budget for that. And those were made by a lot of AA studios, specifically as movie tie-in games. And they weren't great. I played a couple of them. And they just weren't good. And at a time when really that was all starting to ramp up. And companies, you know how big companies will do, is that they'll try something. And if it doesn't work, instead of trying to refine the idea or go back and be like, why did this not work? Maybe if we had done X or Y, it would be better. They'll just abandon it in pursuit of whatever an industry trend is that looks like it's going to make them like $16 kajillion. And so at a time when going and refining some of these games and doing more to make them, more playable, enjoyable games with a larger amount of depth, they just abandoned them. Because after the first wave of Marvel movies, there were no more of those tie-in games. At least not that I'm aware of. I think this Iron Man VR game is the first one of the mainline Marvel, or the new mainline Marvel stuff that's gotten a release or a tie-in or whatever it is going to be specifically since then. So that's about 10 years since the last one, somewhere between 8 and 10 years since the last one of these games was released that I'm aware of. And, we talked about a few that happened in between there. The Arkham games, were great, but that was not really tied into any of the popular movie series. I know, obviously Batman is one of the most popular superhero comic book characters of all time, but it didn't really connect to the huge zeitgeist that popped up around what was the Marvel phenomenon in the late, 2000s, early 2010s. And I mean, Marvel's a juggernaut now. It doesn't look like they're ever going to stop. I'm sure at some point, trends will change and superhero movies will sort of fall out of favor a little bit, much like, maybe not much like Westerns did in the past, but everything sort of has, highs and lows and, peaks and valleys. So we'll see. But anyways, during the time when they could have done some really good, interesting stuff with these superhero games, they just made shitty tie-in games. Marvel Alliance, or the Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and there's another one that was just specifically the X-Men that I'm drawing a blank on what the name was, but it was a very similar type game. They were ARPGs, and one of them, I believe it was the X-Men one, or maybe it's Ultimate Alliance, were multiplayer games, split screen co-op games where that up to 4 Marvel heroes could be on the screen at one time. Those are great games that I have a lot of good memories with, and playing with my friends and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that's much, or at least maybe at the time, was much less popular, that I think would do very well on PC now, especially. But it didn't make all of the money in the world. And instead of going back to that idea and refining it, or applying some of the more modern comic book aesthetic, which, in my mind, just because they're so big, that's the Marvel sort of cinematic universe aesthetic. But still, like, applying some of that to the game to make it more familiar to a generation of kids or teenagers, that this has been their superhero experience, as opposed to comic books or the old animated series. Instead of doing that, they're just basically leaving it, in the bin. Marvel Ultimate Alliance, like I said, I just discovered it looks like they're releasing a third one this year. I just looked at it a minute ago. It's either June or July of this year. And that's the first one of these that we've seen in many years, and I hope it does well. I don't think it's, past the point where it could capitalize on some of that, but it's definitely late to the party, essentially. And I think a lot of other games like this would do well. I mean, superheroes are basically just a way to present other genres. I've mentioned this before on the show, but some of my favorite of the Marvel universe movies are the ones where they're like, let's do this, but with superheroes. Like Spider-Man. What was it? Homecoming? Was that what this Spider-Man solo movie was called?
I think so.
Whatever. Yeah, so Spider-Man Homecoming was basically like a teen high school movie, but with superheroes. And you might think like, well, that's stupid. I want my superhero movie, but there was tons of action and tons of, cool scenes and crazy gadgets and stuff. But it was like, you got all kinds of neat teenage drama and coming of age story stuff too. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies are essentially space operas, but with, superhero comic stuff thrown in. And those are great. Some of them are trending more towards what if comedy, but superhero. what if spy movie but superhero? That's Captain America: Winter Soldier is essentially a take on a spy thriller movie, but with superheroes. It's doing concepts like that in the films are what set them apart and make them interesting. So superhero backdrops are basically just a backdrop for the wider storytelling aspect. I'd love to see some of that applied to games as well.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's also the one genre that superhero stuff seems to have remained popular in for a long time has been fighting games because of the Marvel versus Capcom series, resync. And probably Injustice. Yeah. Those seem to do well for superheroes.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But otherwise, I can't think of anything that has persisted for a long period of time.
I was hoping it wouldn't do it, but it's...
So, anyways, that's my soapbox.
But I actually have a couple of points.
Okay, go for it.
But out covering licensed and unlicensed games. For the unlicensed, I present to you the Superman complex. That's highlighted really in One Punch Man. That once you get too powerful, it becomes boring. But on the flip side, if you're not powerful enough, you're not really a superhero, are you? So,
no.
Or at least, in the traditional sense. Because, we have Batman. He doesn't have powers outside of infinite money. Right?
Yeah.
And being crazy prepared. And just crazy.
On the shitty Justice League movie, I think that's a line. Like Flash says, like, what's your superpower? He's like, I'm rich.
I like on it was now I can't think of the animated version of it, or the name of it, but it was one of the animated DC movies, which DC does a lot better animated. The Flash was bugging Batman, wanting to know what his power is, and he just smirks at him. And he's like, "Are you just some guy in a suit?" No, it wasn't Flash. It was Green Lantern. But yeah, there's also a lovely exchange in that where Batman steals the power ring.
I was gonna say I've seen that. He steals the power ring.
You weren't concentrating. But I think it's very tough to get that balance right. And if you can become if you introduce too much power, you make the game essentially just boring, just to bash them up. Not saying that can't be fun, but usually you have to build around that. And a lot of developers don't want to build that,
Yeah.
So you have that issue. And also, if you go into it and say, well, this guy's really powerful, but that's not fun either. You're just like, well, why am I getting this shitty version of him, right?
Yeah.
So there's that issue. But I think the bigger point is, especially for the licensed stuff, mobile. Mobile has a lot lower barrier to entry, a lot cheaper budget. It doesn't have to sell a bunch of copies because it could be a free-to-play piece of shit that's paid through loot boxes and microtransactions. So I think that's where everything has gone. While we're not getting the superhero games anymore, is because it's a safer bet to make a match 3 game that has, a Spider-Man skin on it. And I'm just reaching here. I'm not sure there actually is one or not. That sells a bunch of power-ups and a bunch of time skips rather than making, more than one Spider-Man game in the last decade. Or I should say, good Spider-Man game. And not doing a movie tie-in at all with it,
Yeah. I mean, Marvel Puzzle Quest is basically that, but good. It doesn't really do the time skips, but it does sell, loot boxes or card packs or whatever, because that's how you level up the heroes to get their new abilities and stuff, is collect 20 of the Iron Man whatever to get
it's a gacha game.
Yeah.
Or gacha. Yeah, I think that's where everything has gone. And the executives, see that as the safer bet because, a AAA game is not cheap to make. And not many superheroes really fit into the AA space. I mentioned Deadpool before. Deadpool's like the oddball that really makes sense to put in a not very polished but still decent game because Deadpool is just weird and they can just do crazy stuff with it. So you have that space, but because all the heroes are so larger than life, it doesn't make sense to spend the money on it because, they screwed up the initial offering, like you said. So I think that's just, it's kind of a combination of they don't want to bother trying to balance the game right. And also, you're not really getting the market value if you're making your own superhero as well. Maybe that's part of the reason why DC Online is kind of struggled on PC is that, there's only a few of the big heroes that are in it, but they're kind of just mentor NPCs and you never really interacted with them that much. At least as far as I can recall, I played it a bit, but never really progressed that far. Well, I should say heroes and villains in that one because you can be a villain and you can be mentored by, I think it was the Joker as a mentor in that, which, seems like a terrible idea, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Unless you make them laugh. But don't outlaugh them.
Yeah, I've never played DC Online.
If I recall correctly, it was decent enough, but it wasn't very good. Which is also kind of the flip side of this, is that, it requires a very dedicated design philosophy to make superheroes. Because superheroes could be, pretty much anything.
Right.
Kind of like what you were talking about with the movie genres, you could have a superhero that, goes as fast as the speed of light. Well, how do you balance around that in the game, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's just a problem of superheroes don't really translate very well to video games.
Maybe. I don't think so. Or I don't think that's it. I think that there would be problems with doing certain things for sure, but there would be other genres which would work fine.
Superman is definitely, I would say, unless you severely depower him for some reason, is probably the toughest to do because he has power set on top of power set on top of power set, right?
Yeah, I mean, he would be difficult to balance, but I think the best way to do a Superman video game would be, you start as Superman, with all of the powers and everything, and the basis of the game is not get stronger to defeat your enemies, maybe one enemy. Because Superman's fought a couple of enemies where he has to figure out how to power up. That's how he discovered, flying into the sun lets him soak up a whole bunch of extra power for a while and things like that. But rather, how do you use your powers creatively to do things like minimize collateral damage? Or, you could just crush everybody, but Superman doesn't typically kill people. I mean, he will. Superman, doesn't always not, but typically, one theme of Superman, he's constantly holding himself back. And give the player all the power.
Speech, right?
Yeah. But, give the player all the power, so don't restrict the player by forcing them to be depowered and just say narrative oh, Superman's holding back. Give them the power to destroy everything, but encourage them hey, hold back, be like Superman, and then come up with creative ways to solve problems. Because it's if you just punch this guy into the sun, then it's over. And allow players the freedom to do that.
How do you incentivize that?
I would allow players to do that, and you get an ending or a whatever. But if you try and do it like Superman would, then you get a better ending or a different set of dialogue and things like that. Just sort of
Because
subtle
actually,
game
you just added
reinforcement.
another zero to the budget.
Yeah. If somebody's getting Superman, then they should have plenty of zeros to work with at this point. I mean, I'm not saying it would be easy or it would be cheap, but if you want to do a good Superman game, that's how you do it. Or at least one way to do it. I'm sure there's other ways to do it, but...
Kryptonite Fog in VR?
That sounds boring.
Well, as long as you make him fly through a bunch of rings, right?
Yep.
Now you're getting what I'm talking about, right?
Gotta fly through those rings. Well, I mean, that I wasn't wrong when I said that sounds boring.
No, just terrible.
Terribly boring. All right. Next topic?
Yeah, I believe so.
Sweet. So the next news topic for the night, new console announcements from Sony and Microsoft. We're kind of combining two here, which is that both Sony and Microsoft have announced consoles. Sony is still keeping it. Yeah, they're keeping it a little close to the chest, but they basically have said a few things about the PlayStation 5.
Well, they haven't officially called it a PlayStation 5, but out of all the console manufacturers, they're the ones that are able to count.
Yeah. Well, Microsoft did the whole 1, 2, skip a few 360, but then they went back to 1.
Yeah, they're trying again, so maybe we'll get 2 next time.
But so Sony's discussing what will most likely be called the PS5, and then Microsoft was confirming some stuff about the Xbox One S. Yeah, Xbox One S all digital edition.
Also, from now on, being known as the Xbox Sad. I'm already seeing people talking about that all over the place.
Yeah.
Whoever runs the naming division for Xbox just needs to get fired at this point. All right.
But they did Xbox One X, which spells Xbox. Like, that's a terrible, like, pun sort of thing, but I like it.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you throw enough things at the wall, eventually something sticks.
Right.
So, they had the X-Bone. They've had the inability to count. and now they're just sad. Do you think this is a cry for help?
Maybe. Phil Spencer's really like, please get me out of here. But they did confirm that the Xbox One S is going to be, for sure, all digital. It's going to be $50 less than
I was expecting that to be a little bit less than that.
I figured it was going to be about 50. I was hoping for 100, but sort of expecting in the neighborhood of 50. And then it's going to come with a couple of games.
Yeah, it's the same dimensions, by the way, which makes sense considering the teardowns that I've seen, how the internals are. This is going to be a complete redesign. This is essentially removing the drive in it. I wonder something, though.
What?
I wonder if they modified the actual motherboard, or can you actually put a drive in this thing modded? That'll be interesting to see Ben Heck get a hold of this.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I know that the Xboxes you can plug external drives into.
Yeah, and this one you can as well, and it comes with a terabyte internal drive, which these days that's kind of small. Gotta admit.
Yeah, I mean, 1 terabyte is honestly pretty standard for a lot of stuff that I see. Sort of, I hesitate to use the term regular people, but like people who don't build their own machines or don't need custom applications, like all the normies. You go look at a pre-built PC or a laptop or whatever. Most of them have got between 1 and a 2 terabyte drive in it. Like for your average user, that is more than enough space. And even with the all digital lineup, I mean, the original Xbox One had a 500 gig hard drive in it, and I never filled it up. And there was a point in time when I was, while I had it, that I was primarily a console gamer versus a PC gamer, and I never filled it up. And I've been all digital for a long time. I was all digital on the Xbox 360 towards the end of its life cycle, when they had a lot more games on the their digital marketplace. So between 1 terabyte and the ability to use external drives, I'd say your average user will be okay. Your average console peasant will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they need stuff for 1,000 Steam games or more.
Well, at least they have the ability to plug in an external drive. I'm actually a little shocked that they don't have it. Now, I realize this requires massive remolding. But where the drive used to be, a secondary drive bay, to be able to have a secondary internal drive without having to rely on external.
You mean the
Xbox One S.
Yeah, but I'm saying like it comes from the factory with an extra one in it, or the user can...
Well, I was saying have a drive bay with the option to plug it in there instead of having the just external USB.
I gotcha. I mean, that makes sense. And as
sort
a
of
PC gamer...
sort of how the PlayStation actually runs. Where
you can swap out the drive on a PS4.
Yeah.
I don't know very many people who actually utilize that, though. I'm sure there's people out there who did. I'd say Microsoft looked at the market research and were like, well, the people who would do this for the console was very small. They're probably already playing on PC.
Yeah, I was just thinking, how they were trying to utilize that extra space, or how they could have, I should say. Because that's just going to be empty space in this. And having a secondary drive would have made sense to me.
Yeah.
Unless they rearrange the insides of this. But if you've watched some of these teardown videos, the Xbox One X S... I hate Microsoft's naming schemes. The normal version of the Xbox SAD, it's pretty tightly packed, actually.
Yeah.
It's actually quite impressive just what they've done with the internals of it. So, I was just trying to figure out, just where they could fit more drive space. But then again, we're kind of late in the hardware cycle at this point, because the PlayStation 5's first rumors are coming out. Or first details, I should say, because this isn't rumors. This is released info.
Yeah, I'd say we'll get a lot more around E3 because PlayStation isn't doing a conference at E3, but they're still doing a presentation like around E3 time.
Yeah, which you don't know how thankful I am they aren't doing a conference.
Yeah. Theirs last year sucked.
That's a generous term.
Well. But anyways, yeah, so they... Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just the fact that they changed venues in the middle of it.
Yeah, that was too much.
That infuriated me.
It did a lot of people. Especially people who were there. But anyways, I mean, so far the PS5, they talked a little bit about some changes to the CPU. All they said was they had a custom GPU as well, like a new custom GPU, which is not a surprise. Consoles always have custom GPUs, just because of the space and things inside that they're having to work with. Changing the audio hardware or the audio something. All they said was they're doing new tests on a new audio system for the console, which I'm not 100% sure what that means. Potentially some new type of... My best guess is some new type of... what's the word I'm looking for? Not API, but... Codec?
Codec, yeah.
Codec, yeah. So a new type of codec that allows for higher quality audio out of something that's more compressed, or that utilizes more like multi-channel setups more appropriately for surround sound and things like that.
Well, considering they're also going to go for 8K resolution.
Yeah. Which
8K at blazing 30 FPS.
I don't believe that it'll do 8K. Like they might.
No, it says on here the PS5 will support 8K resolutions.
Yeah, I don't believe it. I get that they say that, but I don't believe it. They might be able to get it out of a dev console that's hooked up to a bunch of other external hardware to help it out, but I don't believe for a second that it'll do 8K. 4K, yeah, definitely 4K.
No. I think it'll do 8K, variable 8K, where certain scenes will be 8K, certain scenes will be 4K, or some scenes will be 720p.
Yeah. 8K maybe for pre-rendered stuff. Like, it might be able to do 8K for video and any pre-rendered game assets, cutscenes, that sort of thing. But I don't think it'll be able to do 8K, in-engine on the fly. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, because that would be a pretty big step forward in tech, especially console tech, with how far they're behind all the time, essentially.
Well, here's the thing is that they're talking a lot about their SSD technology.
Which I thought was hilarious when we brought this up, because it's like SSDs have been around for a decade, and yeah, they used to be really expensive, but I mean, everybody I know has got at least one SSD in their machine. I've got two, and then I've got one on my laptop, and I've got two external drives that have SSDs in them. Like, they're all over the place now. It's not that big of a deal, but they're like, yes, check out our SSD.
Well,
you could put an SSD in the PS4. Actually,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was it. You could put an SSD in the PS4 with the removable, change out
the
drive.
Well, it looks like they're focusing a lot more on trying to get as much bandwidth out of the memory as possible, which, is interesting because it's going to require or allow for a lot more texture streaming, a lot more streaming off of possibly pre-computed stuff, so essentially pre-rendered, maybe?
Yeah, or somewhere sort of in between, which would be good. I mean...
so are we going back to the PS1 era where, all the good-looking games were, just little sprites with on pre-rendered backgrounds?
Maybe so. That would be interesting. I mean, everything's basically a circle, right? So, history repeats and all that jazz. But, I mean, that does make sense that they would be shooting for that, because... sort of in this weird area where consoles exist, it's like, well, we need powerful hardware to do the stuff we want to do, like as powerful as we can cram into these little boxes. But then you have heat concerns and things like that. You can only scale something up so much between heat and size. So, they like get for what you're getting, like, the money that's spent on them and things like that. Like, you're getting something that's comparatively powerful to the money that's being spent on it. And then you slow all that down with a 52 or a 5400 RPM hard drive. And it's like, well,
that never made sense to me.
No. But I mean, it was all cost cutting. But SSDs are, down in the price per gigabyte range.
I mean, here's the comparison that they were using is Marvel's Spider-Man. Fast traveling between two different spots, 15 seconds on the PS4 Pro versus 0.8 on their dev kit. With this SSD technology going on. Supposedly it's supposed to be a lot higher bandwidth than what PC SSDs are capable of. I guess it's going to be a wait and see, huh?
Yeah, that could be something that I wouldn't be too surprised about, actually, just because that whole proprietary technology and having everything basically hardwired together, you don't have as many transfer points. I mean, you can get blazing fast speed with an actual M.2 SSD.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking this is going to be comparable to.
But I mean, even an SSD over SATA, you can still get in the neighborhood of like 600 megabytes a second in transfer speed, or in read-write speed, which is miles ahead. The potentially 90 to 100 you could get from a ridiculously fast hard drive. Something like the Western Digital Black or the Raptor territory.
Yeah, what do you think this is going to mean for console ports, though, coming up? Is it going to mean that we're going to see a lot more of, games like Rage, where, you just have horrendous texture streaming problems if you're not running it off of a very high-end SSD? And even then, may have issues.
Maybe.
This is a concern to me. But then again, we also have the thing where, we don't know what Microsoft has up their sleeve yet. So if they go for a more traditional hard drive, then it won't be as big a problem.
Also, I mean, RAM, the size of RAM, both actually on GPUs, so VRAM and then, just RAM you put in your machine, which I've gotten it wrong before, so I'm not going to say the letters, but, RAM in your machine and then RAM in your video card. Like, the amount that is just sort of standard nowadays is between 16 and 32 gigs on most off-the-shelf models, and you can get 64, 128, comparatively, relatively speaking, for a low cost, for what that level would have been a couple of hardware generations ago. They might just say, you know what, we'll just load the whole thing into RAM and just stream it off of that. Basically make like a big scratch disk out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that would solve your problem right there.
Go. Well, until you get install sizes are too big for most RAM these days, because that's the other problem is the just compression in general.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting this console generation. Just what happens since PlayStation seems to be embracing a lot of streaming technology from hard disk. They haven't confirmed that there's still going to be disk drives. I'll be shocked if we don't see something like the Xbox SAD on the PlayStation side of things. All digital console by the end of the PlayStation 5 lifespan. Because it seems like they're focusing on this instead of doing another version of the PlayStation 4 Pro, which is probably the right move.
Yeah, I mean, it's about time, honestly, to...
Yeah, I had a friend that was, talking about, maybe picking up a console, and I said that I expect information either this year or next. This was before, rumblings about the PlayStation 5 was coming out. With a release of either late 2019 or mid 2020 to get before the Christmas rush 2020.
Yeah.
Well, I should say, sorry, I got my years backwards. Mid to late 2020 or early 2021. Ugh. So, I'm about on pace, right?
Yeah, I mean, I doubt we'll see a release this year. I suppose anything is possible, depending on how closely they've been playing this to the chest, but I don't think we'll see a release this year.
No, I think
probably
we're
next year.
Yeah, I would say next year's the safe bet.
2021 seems a little too far out, and then 2019 seems a little too early.
Yeah, I said info either this year or late this year, with release next year, or at worst 2021. But this was before any rumblings about the Xbox SAD or the PlayStation 5. So I would say I'm probably on pace for the PlayStation 5 on my early window, and probably the Xbox. Hang on, let me get a random number generator. The Xbox 6. Oh wait, we need to up that to, let's go 1,000. 1 to 1,000. The Xbox 632. There we go. Thank you, Google.
Yep, that makes sense.
I'd say we'll hear a random number gen in Google search. It gives you a random number generator.
Nice.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either. But I suspect we'll hear something this year at E3 from Microsoft about their next console. Although they had a pretty big jump with the Xbox One X, which I still prefer Scorpio. I thought that was cooler. But they had a pretty big jump when they went to that. I was surprised that they were saying, no, this is just another version of the Xbox One, but it's so much stronger than the Xbox One or the S that it feels like it should be a different generation console.
And let's see, it'll be Sky Blue, because I just went random color picker.
Wasn't Sky Blue a console project before, though? That sounds familiar for something. I don't know. I'm sure if you type like Project Sky Blue into Google, you're not going to get helpful results.
At least with that attitude.
I'm going to go ask Bing, because this is Microsoft that I'm thinking of. Project Sky Blue. Yep. Very unhelpful. Although, to be fair, I'm not sure this would be helpful or come up with anything on Google either.
Not really.
I added video games.
The Blue Sky Project.
What is that?
Building individuals and teams from the inside out. Ew.
I was gonna say that sounds icky.
Wait, this is just generic marketing speak. It's 3 paragraphs and it doesn't say what the hell it is. Leaders must either invest a responsible amount of time ascending to fears and feelings, or and it's bright colors for the first half, and then like 4-point font gray on white background for the last half, or squander an unreasonable amount of time trying to manage ineffective and unproductive behavior. And shitty web design. Don't forget that. Shitty web design.
Well, this is just pure pornography that I found on the second page of Bing search results.
Well, once again, it is based off your search history.
Just pure pornography. Sky Blue Search, xnxx.com, and that's porn. Naked and sexy couple fucking under the blue sky from X videos. Oh, there's something called Blue Sky Studios. Category video game. Blue Sky Studios. What is this? Is this porn? No.
Well, everything is porn on the internet.
Oh, God. Blue Sky Studios made a whole bunch of Ice Age tie-in games. Where's
Quick,
the porn?
go back to the porn. It's less filthy.
Oh, here we go. Sky Blue porn videos on Pornhub.com. Open link.
And save for later.
Yes, pure pornography. Oh, look, there's some video game porn on here. On this page. Cool.
Bringing it back to games.
Back to gaming. Absolutely.
Speaking of going back to gaming.
Yeah?
Sorta.
Sort of?
This popped up on one of the gaming subreddits, and I thought it was amusing. YouTube to create interactive narratives, which technically could be games, so I'll allow it.
Yeah.
So YouTube is essentially trying to follow Netflix with some of their interactive stuff. Netflix has one of the Black Mirror. Is it a spinoff? Is it an episode? I don't watch Black Mirror. I don't like that type of show, so I haven't watched it.
Yes. I mean, Black Mirror is sort of, each of their episodes are sort of a self-contained thing that's like exploring a concept or an idea. It's like, what if technology bad, Yeah,
it seems like all of them are just, pseudo horror or something like that. And I'm not a horror guy, so. But they've also explored it with a stripped down version of the Minecraft story.
Yep.
Or Minecraft story mode. They have now Bear Grylls on there. Essentially people trying to kill him. But to be fair, Bear Grylls tries to kill himself all the time.
Better drink his own piss.
Well, it has been 15 minutes.
It has been.
I didn't like Bear Grylls. I preferred Survivor Man. Less drow.
Yeah, I actually preferred Survivor Man as well, because Bear Grylls had a camera crew out with him, and Survivor Man just had some cameras and a tripod.
Yeah, and also, even before you knew for sure it was set up, there was way too many coincidences on Man vs. Wild,
Yeah.
And he took way too many risks.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're off base, which is really surprising.
Par for the
YouTube,
course.
the title of this was on PC Games Inn. That's where I saw it. YouTube follows Netflix into the interactive video business. It's kind of funny they do this now after they killed just a slew of interactive videos when they deleted annotations, huh?
Yeah, which I didn't think of before you brought it up, because I wasn't all that interested in this topic, honestly. And then you're like, oh, they did that. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. They did. Because I did watch some of those,
I toyed around with them, and I was actually thinking about making one at one point. I wasn't sure exactly what project I wanted to tackle, but then they announced, there was rumors of annotations going away, and I thought, well, so much for that idea. So I, never got off the ground.
Right.
But there was so many projects that they killed with that just, they just ruined. There was interactive games of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. People doing, just complete from scratch versions of it. I knew of a couple Let's Play series. I think the Stanley Parable, it was essentially every choice you could follow through.
Mm-hmm.
So every choice, it would pop up the annotation to jump to a hidden video of that. And they ruined a lot of stuff with that. And the fact that now they're like, oh, wait a minute. It makes me wonder how they're going to do this on mobile. Because that was the big problem with the annotations. They never got them. Well, they never bothered to try to fix them on mobile. But mobile is a big platform for YouTube. So, they're trying to push interactive fiction now, or interactive videos, I guess I should say. But does that really fit with YouTube's business practices these days?
Making interactive videos, or making...
Well, YouTube has pushed... I know you've kind of slacked up on YouTube. I have as well, but I've still been following it. They've pushed the idea that you want to have very short to the point videos at right around the 10-minute mark. Have you noticed that videos have gotten shrunk from average of about 20 minutes to about 10 minutes now?
Not on most of the channels that I watch, actually. They're mostly Patreon supported and don't
I should say the
YouTube's
ad supported
rules.
ones.
Yeah, I suppose I do watch.
That's because the algorithms favor channels that have a very particular type of content. That's why Yongye is like always 10 to 15 minutes. Always. That's one to watch. Watch Yongye at some point and notice. Well, I'm looking at his stuff right now. Videos. 13 minutes, 12 minutes, 15, 11, 17. There's a long one. 14, 15, 17, 12, 10, 22, 10, 54. So the fact that they're trying to push this, it makes me wonder how they're going to balance it around the algorithms. Are they going to try to get people that have more interactive stuff? To be fair, this is a completely separate division.
Well, is YouTube producing the content themselves? Are they going to do any of that? Because they do have YouTube original content.
They haven't said. That's the thing. Is this going to be something that they're releasing as a tool? And if so, we could see a resurgence of the interactive channels once again, which would tie back into gaming content. Which actually interests me a lot more than what YouTube does with stuff. I can't even think of anything YouTube original I've watched that isn't a creator that's done it. Let's see. Yeah, YouTube has been scaling back its original scripted shows, but hasn't entirely given up on making their own content. It's set to announce a bunch of new shows next month, although it seems unlikely that the new interactive unit will feature as part of that showcase. So they've scaled back their original content as well. That doesn't bode well for that, huh?
Yeah, I don't think so.
That makes me think this is going to be a tool.
That would be interesting. I'd like that if it was a tool.
Let's
see how YouTube fucks it up.
Or what they break, or what else they break when they release it. Because that's the other thing, is that when YouTube fixes something, they either break it or make something worse. Like the Creator Studio. Oh, I hate the Creator Studio, or the new one. I pretty much have to use Chrome with it now. It actually just hangs there on Firefox. It has like I would say a 10 or 15 second loading time for me. And I'm not sure if it's just my computer being old or if they're just purposely breaking Firefox.
I would hope that they weren't purposely breaking Firefox, but I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, it's not like YouTube are a bunch of dicks or anything.
Yeah. Assholes.
Well, also, if this becomes a tool, I want to trust them to support it for long enough to really want to produce anything for it. Because that's the other thing is that, people have been caught out with YouTube before. Just look at Google Plus, right?
Yeah.
The like 5 people that actually that did content for it.
Good old Google Plus.
I think that's the first time anybody's used the term Google Plus in good without a negative in that.
I did kind of like Google Plus more than like Facebook and stuff, just for the way it displayed content to you. But I mean, nobody used it, so it was like, I guess I won't use it either. Yeah.
Yeah, a real chicken and egg problem where, how do you get people to join in whenever nobody wants to leave Facebook because all their friends are on Facebook?
Yeah.
Sharing semi-racist content, or at least that's my Facebook feed.
Well, what you do is you spend a bunch of money buying Facebook exclusive content and put it on your service.
That's not going to work because Facebook just copies content from other places anyway and puts it back on there.
It's very true. This would be more difficult to do with Facebook than it is with Steam. You see what I did there?
I can't tell you how many times I've seen something on Facebook like 2 or 3 days after I've seen it on Reddit.
Oh, yeah, that happens all the time.
And everybody's talking about how this is an amazing new thing. I'm thinking, I saw this last week.
Yeah, that happens all the time. Katie or someone at work will be like, oh, check out this thing. And I'm like, I saw that on Reddit last week or a couple of days ago. They're like, shut up. Pretend it's the first time you've seen it and then it's amazing. It's like, it's not on both counts. But, alrighty.
Much like this concept for YouTube. It's not something, it's something that we've seen before and it's not amazing. It wasn't amazing before and it's not amazing now. Huh?
Indeed. What?
Just sounds like your life force is gone.
Indeed.
Alrighty.
Well, let's move
left
on.
eyebrow rises slightly.
Yeah, I can't raise just one eyebrow at a time.
Oh, I
can't
can
do that. Well, aren't you special?
Indeed.
Well,
and you can't see it, but I raised my eyebrow.
I believe you. All right. So, Community Corner. Did we have any tweets?
Nope.
Okay. Then it'll just be another quick game night discussion.
Mm-hmm.
We played Black Ops this past week. We did gun game and some 3v3. We had a blast. Had a good time. Black Ops will probably come back up in the rotation at some point. Do some other stuff in it too, but we had a good time. Just a couple hours of silly fun, shooting each other, telling Kyle to go fuck himself. It's a pretty regular part of the night. Love you, buddy. I'm still bitter, though. You know what I'm bitter about. I'm not going to bring it up here on the show, but you know.
Ooh, I got to hear this
Kyle.
after the fact.
Oh, no, I mean, you already know about it. It happened sometime. Fuck it. I'll go ahead and say it on the show. When Planetary Annihilation, whenever he blew up my planet when I had never played the game before, and I got really mad and almost quit playing that night after like 40 minutes. But then I persevered because I'm not going to let him win. Then there was a story about how that several people or a couple people ganged up on him in their current Civ game and basically screwed him over out of a bunch of stuff, and he got really mad. And I was like, yeah, fuck you, Kyle. This brings me joy because of what you did to me that one time. And he was like, dude, that was years ago now. And I'm like, I know. I'm very bitter. I'm holding on to it forever. So there you go, Kyle.
Yes, let the hate flow through you.
But we had a good time. I especially had a good time because of that fact. Next week, or this coming week, whatever, we are going to do some Rocket League. We'll, depending on how many people show up, we'll either do some private match stuff, or, if not a lot of people are able to make it, then we might do more, team up and just play against people online. But if there's enough people, we'll do private match and mess around. Like what we have done before. Chase the fish.
Mel's.
And just generally have a good time. And that's that for Community Corner, except for you telling people how to send us stuff.
Yeah, if you wish to send us stuff, you could do so. VGLpodcast@gmail.com. Tweet us to us. VGL Podcast on the Twitter, or just comment on our Discord, which Discord has a link on our page, vglpodcast.podbean.com. So, music?
Indeed. Another double indeed. As I head over towards my discovery queue, which I have open this time.
Yeah,
but I
still have something immediately.
Nah. What do you got?
Corpse Party Sweet Sachiko's hysteric birthday bash. It looks weird, and it's like your perfect thing.
Okay.
And I need to copy a link for you. I copied the thing, and I scrolled way past it. Hang on. Where are you? There you are. There you go. There's a link for you. Visual novel. The vengeful spirit, Sachiko Tsunachiki, is having a birthday bash, and the lovable cast of damned souls from the Corpse Party series is invited. I don't know Corpse Party. I believe it's an anime.
I've never heard of that before, but
yeah, there you go. Hey, it's been a while since since I had a weird visual novel, so there you go. Right?
Thanks. I get them frequently, but they suck, so
mine usually look decent-ish.
I still don't have anything, so don't worry about me if you've got another one.
Oh, wow. Hang on. Why is... this is probably going to be a discovery queue, avoid at all costs. But, those are always fun as well, right?
They are.
And it's a Final Fantasy game.
Okay.
The Sarah Final Fantasy NT Free Edition. Voted mostly negative, 37% with 1,500 votes right now. I mean, damn, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to find... Let's see. 3v3 is a chaotic hot mess, and that's the only match type available. Peer-to-peer multiplayer between 6 people in 2019, no less, is a bad idea with poor execution. A hard-to-follow UI that's not suited for PC, slow, unresponsive, clunky camera. I'm just reading off the second most popular review. Gameplay is interrupted regularly by summoning long states of invisibility in varying arenas, not suited for 3v3. Odd frame rate cap, usually on cutscenes, including victory, defeat, summoning cutscenes, but also menus. Overall, poor PC port. So yeah, avoid like the plague. It sounds like free is way too much to pay.
Gotcha. Well, I finally got one. The Horus Heresy Legions. Do you like CCGs? Do you like Warhammer 40k?
I had this last week.
This is a CCG for you. Well, there you go. Then it's getting featured twice. I mean, it's a CCG with Warhammer. That's really all there is to say about it, so I'm going to keep looking for things on my list.
I got one. This seems familiar. I think you may have done this one. Pray for the Gods. I think this was one of yours a while back.
Yeah.
Pray for the Gods is a brutal journey set on a desolate, frozen island where your only chance of survival is to destroy the very gods you believe in. Checkmate, atheists.
Yeah, atheists.
So it feels like a kind of Shadow of the Colossus with its very, very big boss fights, but a little bit of Monster Hunter thrown in with the survival elements, but also is not just big baddies as well. So it looks like a weird combination of things. It's early access for $30. I'm getting a lot of trash this week.
Yeah, I did too. I got another one though. Zenki Zero Last Beginning.
Oh dear God, here's one that's done MS Paint. No.
Explore ruins, dungeons, and islands in this post-apocalyptic world through the POV of 8 protagonists as they fight for survival and search for meaning in the never-ending cycles of life and death. This looks like a combination visual novel and turn-based RPG set in Waterworld. So all it needs is Kevin Costner.
And cigarettes.
But otherwise, I'm in. Even without Kevin Costner, this looks interesting.
Okay, I had too much trash. I had to start another one.
Wow,
I mean, I didn't
has
have
that ever
to,
happened
but-
to you before?
Rarely, but my first one on my next one looks interesting. And it has very few reviews, so it looks like maybe a hidden gem. It was released technically yesterday. Because, 15 minutes.
Right.
Sorry, you're done with Waterworld?
Yeah.
Heaven's Vault. Explore lost ruins of the Nebula. Read ancient inscriptions and uncover a forgotten past in this narrative archaeological science fiction adventure game from the creators of 80 Days. So pretty much sold immediately, right?
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
It has a bit of a high price tag on it. I'm not sure, if this is more grander in scope than 80 Days was, because this is a $25 game. But yeah, it has a kind of an interesting art style. It's everything feels very flat, doesn't it? Looking at the screenshots, the characters, I should say, like there's no shadows on them, so it gives a very flat appearance. I mean, it's not terrible, but at the same time, it's an interesting art style. Looks like there's some sort of narrative choice going on as well.
Ah, shit. I just clicked away from one that looked interesting.
Well, I just got another one. It looks like this Discovery Queue's back up to my usual standards. Deck of Ashes.
I've seen that somewhere. Maybe in Keymailer. I haven't seen it.
Deck of Ashes is an adventure game with tactical card combat. One character at a time lead the cast of anti-heroes on a quest for redemption. Explore the cursed fantasy world and hunt down powerful cards. So, sort of. Oh, now I'm blanking on the name of the CCG that roguelite. It'll come to me eventually, but it has a very similar feel to it. I wonder if this is from the same developer. Of course not.
Well, I got one. And it's the last game on my queue as well, so I'm going to have 3 this week. Siege of Centauri. This is a tower defense game, which I do like. And it just generally, I like the art style. I like the way the levels seem to be presented. I really like the artwork. It just looks good. And for tower defense, that's like half of it right there, so.
Well, I got pretty much, once I get to it, probably a sale game for me, though, to be perfectly honest, because I'm like 2 behind now. Yakuza Kiwami 2, a remake of Yakuza 2 for the PlayStation 2. So, yeah, I mean, the Yakuza series has really grown on me as I've been playing it, or the Yakuza 0. It's wacky fun, but still has a very interesting storyline that doesn't feel like it's ripped from a Saints Row game, or a later Saints Row game, I should say. I would say it's definitely worth a pickup. But I would say start with Yakuza 0. It's a good entry point to the series because it's a prequel to everything. But the Kiwami is essentially just remaster of whatever the rest of the title is. So this is a remaster of the second game, and what was the second game in the storyline. Now it's the third. So there you go. I'm glad to see that they're continuing to support PC.
Yeah, I do want to get into the Yakuza series eventually on PC. I mean, I've been interested for a while.
I would say watch
being
out for
positive on
Yakuza
them.
0 going on sale. Probably during the summer sale, pick it up.
Okay.
I'm just going through my secondary queue now. I'm halfway through it, so I'm going to have a lot of links on mine. Zankini 0 Last Beginning. And I didn't copy the link. I copied the...
Oh, that's the one that I put up a minute ago. Waterworld.
Oh, all right. I didn't catch the name, so okay, I'll take that off my list. Let's see. Oh, what in the hell is this? This may be of interest to you. And it has a free demo going on for the next 6 days.
Okay.
Free-to-play MMO with tactical combat, Conqueror's Blade. It looks like kind of Mount and Blade-ish, only on a more green scale with the armies. It's interesting looking. It has mixed reviews. Oh, they're talking about loot boxes. Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, definitely not good.
It almost feels a little For Honor-ish as well. Maybe it's just the scale of it, you know?
Yeah, potentially.
Let's see, that looks trash. Hello. About another one. Pathway. Pathway is an adventure into the strange unknown. Oh, sorry. Adventure into the strange unknown with Pathway, a strategy RPG set in the 1930s Great Desert Wilderness. So, roguelite-ish? Yeah, roguelite turn-based strategy with some dungeon crawling, it looks like. It has some mixed reviews, so it's... may not be everybody's cup of tea. Looks like there's some problems probably with the unlocks, which is a bad sign for a roguelite, to be perfectly honest. You want good level progression. Oh, dear God, that's a terrible fighting game. Oh, and that looks even worse. Oh, that looks terrible. And that was the end of my queue. So, the second queue ended up padding me out, right?
6, 7, 8. You had 8. I had 3.
Yeah, which I would have had 3 otherwise. Which felt wrong somehow, you know?
Then smash cut. I hit him with those socials, Rage.
Well. And then I have to cough and clear my throat. Oh. Want to try it again?
Sure. Hit him with the socials, Rage.
I've been Caffeine Rage. You can find me on YouTube, Gaming with Caffeine Rage. You can find me on Twitter, Gaming with CR, and maybe eventually someday you'll be able to find me on Twitch. I do still have that aspiration. Twitch.tv, Caffeine_Rage. And you've been...
Gaming Psychologist. And if you want to find my stuff, you can do so on the YouTubes by searching for Gaming Psychologist. You can follow me on Twitter at JMA4707, or be my friend on Steam by sending a friend request to jarthur4707.
And if you wish to let them know exactly what episode of the podcast you're coming from, the password for this week is interruption. Interruption. Nice. It seemed fitting because, we had a couple interruptions. And also, speaking of fitting, once again, if you wish to contact the podcast, you can do so at vglpodcast@gmail.com with your letters, voicemails, gaming-related topics, or just tweet them to us, VGLpodcast, on the Twitter. If you wish to join the legions of our lovely, lovely patrons, you can do so at patreon.com/VGLpodcast, who have paid for our Podbean account, vglpodcast.podbean.com, which hosts the RSS feed, our show notes, links to all our media, but you can also find us on iTunes, Google Play, and your podcatcher of choice if RSS feeds scare you. Our intro and outro music is On the Ground by Kevin McLeod, and our Discovery Cube music is Doobly Doo by the same artist. His work can be found at incompetech.com, and
as always, as his lovely music starts to roll across my voice, bye-bye now.
See you next time.